Um, so this idea of mindfulness is the idea of improving our concentration and allowing us to be more engaged interpersonally as we find ourselves aware of emotions that begin to surface in our interactions with our patients, that we're aware of them and we recognize that emotions, if we allow them to pass through, have a lifespan of only about 90 seconds. It's when we dwell on an emotion that they become distractors and actually have a longer lifespan than is sort of helpful. This is a quote from Jim Dethmer and the group at the Conscious Leadership Group, and I've inserted the word therapist. They said, the conscious therapists experience what's going on now. They allow themselves to be freed from old patterns and be present in their interaction, and therefore better able to serve the people they're serving, the patients that are in front of them, and ultimately the world that we serve. Another idea from the neurosciences field is the idea that what we choose to focus our minds on actually changes our brains. We choose to focus on the positive, we choose to focus on growth, our brains are going to grow in the creative direction, and that growth is going to actually make our brains more capable, our minds more capable of handling challenges in the future. And I also love that hand brain, so I had to find a place to put it in. So as we talk about this idea of the conscious therapist, I wanted to sort of say to those who have a neuroscience background and a neuro-rehab background, these are constructs that we use every day with every patient that we treat. And we can trust and we can lean into these constructs. It might be a little scary. It might feel like you don't know whether you're going to catch yourself or your friends are going to catch you, but there's definitely room for growth because mindfulness is based on the same principles of neuroplasticity that you use every day in treating your patients. The platform for NeuronUP is based on the assumption that the human brain and the damaged human brain can grow and learn. And we're working on the same assumption that the neurotherapist's brain can grow and we can grow personally in our interaction with other folks. So the idea of being able to grow, I like to popularize further this quote that is quoted by Viktor Frankl. Dr. Frankl was a Holocaust survivor and also a neuropsychiatrist. And in this quote that he found and then popularized, he talks about between stimulus and response, there's always a space. Now, for many of our patients, that space is very small. And sometimes for ourselves, we find ourselves reacting without thinking and even knowing what's going on. But he says, regardless of the stimulus, there's always some space there. And it's in that space where we begin to have the power to choose our response. And then our growth and freedom lies in that response. So part of becoming mindful is how can I grow that space so that when the patient has said something to me that I recognize is challenging me, I'm reacting from a negative space, can I begin to recognize what's going on inside of me so that I have essentially more time to respond? So the journey toward mindfulness is getting to the point where you can say, I'm actually going to give myself more time to respond to the challenges that life is giving me. And what might that look like? So essentially, we're making the claim that a mindfulness platform is essentially the ability to stop time. So what would that tool look like? You would think, we must be talking about a fairly complex tool here. Is it going to look like the most pumped out Swiss Army knife? No, actually it's not. Well, at least it's got to have some highly technical elements to it where we talk about brain science or something like that. And actually the tool that we're going to introduce today is a deceptively simple tool. And so we're going to introduce the tool, and the tool, drum roll here, is nothing more than a simple line. And again, this is not original to my thinking, thanks to the people at the Conscious Leadership Group for popularizing this. And simply the tool is the invitation to stop and say, at this moment in time, what's going on inside of me? Where am I right now? What are the thoughts that I'm noticing? What emotions are surfacing? What is my body telling me about how I am showing up in the world right now in the middle of what all's going on? So essentially, to elaborate a little bit more on this construct, is stopping and asking yourself, in this particular moment, am I finding myself ready to respond from a place that we call below the line, which is about being defensive, about defending your need to be right, and quite honestly, a core or common emotion there being fear? Or am I open? Am I fully present? Do I have true curiosity? And am I willing to learn in this moment? And in that moment, things may be going pretty poorly with regard to your session with your patient, but you step back and go, wow, what can I learn from this about myself, about my client in the moment? A quick side comment about, and I teach these same constructs to my medical students at the University of South Carolina, and obviously we want our doctors to be right. We want them to be right about factual things. I want them to use the right dosage when they give me my next allergy shot. But if a person is holding on to right because they have a personal need to be right and they need to prove to other people that they're right about interpersonal things, that's when they're really holding on to rightness from below the line. A lot of times that's an invitation for us to step back and say, where do I source my security and control and approval? And is my winning this argument is simply more about me being right than me learning? So if you think about when you find yourself in this state that we call being below the line, what's the emotional and mental energy that shows up there? So when you're below the line, there are a number of different beliefs or behaviors or statements that might characterize being below the line. And an exercise, if you're interested in doing a little bit more deeper dive, is after this webinar, come back to these slides and say, which of these beliefs characterize who I am when I recognize that I'm in a place of that negative energy? What are some of the things that I do when I'm below the line? And what are some of the words that come out of my mouth when I recognize that I'm below the line? So this would be an opportunity for you to do a little bit more exploration of what it feels like for you when you are below the line. And going back to those three centers of intelligence, bodily sensations, thoughts and beliefs, and statements, how do I know what my style is when I'm showing up in a negative space below the line? Also, there are a number of different roles you might be playing. We don't have time today to elaborate on these, but the idea that when we're below the line, frequently we're in a dance called the drama triangle. A lot of us show up as victims where we see the world happening to us. We may show up as a villain where we blame other folks, or we might try to hero other people because of our discomfort of what they're going through. So is there an alternative? The alternative is to make that decision. Am I willing to move to above the line and think about the emotional and mental energy that comes with the moving to above the line? So if I'm above the line, what are some of the beliefs that I can characterize? So for me personally, one of the beliefs that I had to grow in was the belief that it's more valuable for me to learn and grow than to be right in a particular situation. Can I pause and in a moment take a breath, step back in appreciation for the fact that I'm learning from my patient, even though the situation might not be going well, and then being able to make statements that are consistent with that. So the idea is, can I be present And instead of being in the victim, villain, or hero mentality, I can be in a place where I see myself as creating what's happening in front of me, helping others who might be working with me in either the voice of the challenger or the coach. And the other thing to recognize, frequently when we introduce the ideas of above and below the line, that people equate above the line with being happy and below the line being sad or angry. It is quite possible to be very happy below the line. There are a lot of people spend most of their life below the line and they're happy with that, but they don't recognize that they're actually living as victim or villain there. It's also possible to be sad above the line. You can have a realization of this is a tragic event. I recognize what's going on. I find myself as being sad, but I'm also willing to learn and grow in that moment. So the ability to step back and ask yourself, where am I at right now? Am I above or below the line? Am I willing to be curious? And am I willing to learn? This particular slide is one that we have posted in almost every treatment space in our outpatient brain injury program, because it is sort of subtly a reminder to all of my staff and myself included for us to do the gut checks. But we invite our patients to be in that same journey with us. This is actually part of the model that my colleagues Amanda Mass and Marty Van Dam presented on last month. It's part of our patient ACIP model. So the challenge is to recognize that nobody lives all of their day above the line, and hopefully you don't live all of your day below the line, but we find ourselves drifting below the line and then stepping back and saying, am I willing, first off, can I recognize that I am in that place below the line, and am I willing to shift? Am I willing to make that decision to be in control of myself? And going back to the Frankl quote, am I willing to, in that space, choose my response and then have the opportunity for growth? So that shifting may be stepping back and simply going, I'm wondering what's going on right now. It might be changing your posture, getting up and walking around the room, recognizing that the session might not be going well and saying, well, I know that in some way I've contributed to this, and then I'm going to breathe and I'm going to see what I can learn about myself as we go through.